and the divides here at the table, but the millions of people, thousands of people who consider themselves anti-Trump, who were once Republicans, and a whole movement of Republicans who, I mean, I can remember sitting at a meeting leading up to this election. I've got Bill Kristol sitting here. I've got, former friends, conservatives from across the aisle. We were all aligned in how do we defeat Trump. It was a meeting.
How'd it work out?
You know what, Scott?
Just asking.
All right.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to yesterday's news channel, where we watch CNN so you don't have to. Last night on CNN's Newsnight with Abby Phillip, Scott Jennings was back on the panel, and honestly, it was actually one of the uglier segments I've seen in a long time. The liberals were hostile, sure, but the real low blow came from a so-called Republican who accused Scott Jennings of changing, not just politically, but personally. The implication? Supporting Donald Trump makes you unworthy of respect. And once that shot landed, the floodgates opened. Scott Jennings spent the rest of the segment getting tag teamed, not in the fun way, by emotional panelists all melting down over a federal judge's ruling that blocked Trump's executive order on birth tourism, not through constitutional reasoning, of course, but by abusing a class action loophole to issue a nationwide injunction. Anyway, let's watch Scott Jennings stay composed while everyone else completely falls apart. Let's go.
This is not the Republican Party that I grew up in, and I don't think it's ever coming back. I think it's gone. I think it's gone for good. They're in the ditch, and they just don't know it yet.
How are we in the ditch?
We won the national popular vote last November. We won a crushing victory in the Electoral College. We won majorities in the House and the Senate. We just passed the big, beautiful bill. Peace is breaking out in the Middle East. Peace is breaking out on the African continent. Gas prices are lower than they've been in 4 years. Taxes are going to be low. Egg prices are down 69%. The southern border is secure. Jeff, these are things Republicans have believed in for a very long time.
But Scott, I mean, we can't forget that it wasn't that long ago when you were probably closer to the Mike Pence view of this, that you were not necessarily a Trump supporter until fairly recently.
I voted for him 3 times.
I'm making news here at this table because what I'm pointing to is that your evolution is mirroring something that's happened in the Republican Party in general. Anything about Trump has changed in the interim. It's really more that people like you have gone from being more aligned with a Mike Pence to being more aligned with Donald Trump. And explain that to us.
It's a good and valid question, but I don't see much disalignment. They have a personality conflict. Pence and Trump obviously had a falling out over a very serious issue. But on conservative orthodox policy stuff, the only real area where Trump has truly changed the party is on tariffs and trade. He believes in tariffs a lot more than any other president has since the early 1900s. And so that is a major difference in the platform. I acknowledge that. But on taxes, on the border, on pro-life, on having a strong military, and even now getting NATO strengthened with the 5%, helping Israel defeat Iran, he's not an isolationist. He is, on many ways, the same as every other Republican president of my lifetime and of your lifetime. There are some differences, but it's not as vast, I think, as you want it to be.
Donald Trump does not remind me of Ronald Reagan. And the Scott Jennings, who was a Republican growing up, working for Mitch McConnell, George Bush, and others, very respectable Republicans, would probably not even shake hands with the Scott Jennings that's sitting here today.
Well, I shook hands with Mitch McConnell this week, so A. B, Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump worked together to change the Supreme Court and give us a 6-3 majority to pass the tax cuts in 2017. Again, personal differences are different than policy alignment. Do you think Donald Trump showed
respect to your former boss, Mitch McConnell?
Do you think he's respected respect to him?
Yeah.
Not always, no.
If we asked you to find one day since his inauguration that he has not lied to you and your family, do you think you could do it? One day he's spoken publicly? Because he can't stop lying, Scott. And I do think the party's changed quite a bit. The Republican Party I grew up with would not delight in beating cops for a lie and then pardoning the people who beat the cops. I don't know what conservatism means anymore. This gentleman is the perfect person to speak to what Mike Pence is going through, because what does it mean? It doesn't mean family values, doesn't mean the Christian values, fiscal responsibility.
Again, we don't live in a theocracy. We live in a nation of laws. We live in a nation of policy choices. Our policy choices today are basically the same as Republican policy choices, with the exception of tariffs, which I acknowledge. But this president, has done a lot of conservative stuff that people have always wanted.
You've said two things a few times on the show. One about not living in a theocracy, which you're right. But it is also true, and I think this is John's point, that for many, many decades, the Republican Party, and even under Trump, says explicitly, we are a Judeo-Christian society. He claims to his supporters that his faith is important, that it's the most important thing in American society. He says that.
Yeah.
That the Bible should be taught in schools, that he is selling a Bible with his name on it. So there's that.
It's
but
true.
then secondly, but you're suggesting that he's the same old Republican as everybody else.
No.
But I think that Jillian
His
is
attitude's
perhaps proof that that's not the case.
His attitude and his ability to get things done, his spirit, the way he fights the left, the way he fights for free speech in Western civilization, and the way he's open to coalition building and building non-traditional alliances is a key
I think
political
that
talent.
explains your support. That Jillian is correct that on those policy issues, Trump has tried to be somewhere in, dare I say, a bit of the mushy middle on some of this stuff. He ran as an anti-war candidate. What he ran on versus how he actually governs, it shifts. But what he ran on and what he pulled people in on, I think, is the difference here.
But I think
This jagoff on the right here is the biggest loser they have on the show. He never brings anything to the conversation. I mean, they are scraping the bottom of the barrel. I used to think, wow, could I ever be on one of these shows? Like, if they're letting guys like this on, I'll be fine on Newsnight. Do you see what I'm talking about? Everyone on the panel is ganging up on Scott and attacking him for his political views. It's like they feel even more entitled to do so because they have this douchebag Republican co-signing on this episode. And they're turning on him not because he did anything wrong, but because he refuses to disavow Donald Trump. I'm impressed that Scott kept his cool when that one so-called Republican panelist douche launches some weirdly personal dig suggesting that Scott wouldn't recognize his former self. Not a policy critique, not a fact check, just petty drama masquerading as insight. The guy's a joke. None of them really tried to refute what Scott said. Instead, they pivoted to nonsense like this idiot asking, was Trump ever disrespectful to Mitch McConnell? Yeah, he has been, idiot, but Scott's not a pussy like you. These people never want a conversation. They just want to take Scott down. But they're never able to because Scott always stays rational, composed, and just completely unbothered, which is, to me, a very admirable strength. The rest of the panel, though, just emotional, flailing. They're just desperate to win, whatever that means in this context. If anything, this was a reminder. Donald Trump may not be perfect, but he's unapologetically fighting for things that matter. Border security, American jobs, and yes, God-given values. And here's a question for the douche that brings up the Bible in a political conversation. When has God ever used a perfect person to spread his message? Let's get back to it.
This militarization of enforcement is something that is clearly beyond the pale and does not belong in a democracy.
Well, we're headed back to the Supreme Court. I mean, the result of this loophole that this judge found today for a nationwide injunction is that we'll be back in front of the Supreme Court over this. The conservative justices predicted that this would happen, that some abuse of the class action designation could occur. And so, we'll go back to the Supreme Court. I don't know what they're going to rule. I mean, there's some indication that they may not rule in his favor. He has a point of view on it. Other people have a point of view on it. But this ought to be settled as a policy matter by the U.S. Supreme Court. That's where it's going.
Actually,
I assume it'll be pretty soon.
And actually, Scott, I disagree with you. I believe what Amy Coney Barrett said was they were talking about standing in the initial response, and what they said was you could do it as a class action. They didn't say an abuse of class action. They said you could.
Alito and Thomas predicted that this kind of abuse of this would happen. And that's okay. It's going to wind up back in front of the Supreme Court. And why is it lawless to take something before the Supreme Court?
It's not. It's lawless.
They did create a process by which class actions would really be the only way to challenge.
It wasn't followed in this case.
Well, it was. They certified a class.
But they circumvented the process.
The judge certified a class. And
I mean, the only thing Donald Trump hates more than immigrants is the Constitution and the Bible that protects them. And it's worth pointing out he's our only president to have hired undocumented immigrants in 2 different centuries to avoid paying a living wage to an American worker. If they wanted the border crossings to stop, they would go after the employers. There's a gigantic help wanted sign at our border, and the Republican Party will never take that help wanted sign down. They will never take
literally
down,
almost zero.
but they're not going after the employers.
You
the
said,
white guy, hang on.
If they wanted them to stop, they would. They have stopped. Already have stopped. Have they not?
No, they have not, and they will continue to come. Donald Trump will. Okay, they come here because white people. Okay, may I? They come here because white folks like Donald Trump hire them to avoid paying a living wage to an American worker.
Effectively shut down.
And Donald Trump has already said he will not be going after the agricultural sector. The white folks who do the hiring and make the profits have a safe, exploited labor force.
The point he's making is about whether Trump is going to go after the employers. And
I mean,
The answer is no, he's not. But hold on. But look, right
I'm
now,
asking about the
right now, okay.
Is the border effectively closed?
There are very few border crossings. It's not zero, but it's very few. So
If you watch these with me regularly, Abby Phillip interrupts Scott Jennings a lot, right? We can all agree on that. But did you notice when this jagoff was sitting there talking about the borders not shut down? First, again, I told you he's a moron. Scott has to essentially beg Abby to do her job and moderate and correct the record with this jackass like they do every time with Scott. So yeah, I'm sure you guys all know, but what they're talking about is a federal judge in California just blocked Trump's executive order cracking down on birth tourism. So birthright citizenship, foreign nationals fly to the U.S., have a kid, claim automatic citizenship. Trump's trying to shut it down, but of course, how many times has this happened now? One Obama-appointed judge said nope. And not just for the plaintiffs, for everybody. A national injunction. This birthright citizenship thing is a problem. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, over 33,000 foreign nationals give birth in the U.S. each year just to secure citizenship for their child. And as you'd expect, this judge didn't strike it down on constitutional grounds. He used procedural... And I'm sure this is what you suspected, but just to confirm, he didn't strike it down on constitutional grounds. He used a procedural loophole, Rule 23b2, which lets plaintiffs file a class action suit even if most of the people supposedly represented have never even heard of the case. So that's what let him issue a nationwide injunction and block a federal immigration policy from his single crappy little courtroom. That's not legal precedent. That's procedural activism. So now it's headed to the Supreme Court. So CNN's thinking, how are we going to turn this legal mess into a character attack on anyone who supports Trump? Maybe that's why they had Jackass there, because he's the one who claimed Trump hates the Bible while doing my favorite thing, using religion to score political points. And then in the cringiest moment of the entire video, blamed white Republicans for the border crisis. What does race have to do with it? So in a lot of videos, you see the word meltdown, or I mention it in the intro. That's what this was. This wasn't analysis. It was a meltdown. Look, if you have to lie, mock religion, or hijack the courts to win a debate, you've already lost and now you're just trying to cheat somehow. Scott Jennings didn't just hold his own. He exposed the game in this, because whether it's a judge in California or a panelist on CNN, the strategy's always the same. Silence the truth and punish anyone who speaks it. And do you think Scott was treated fairly in the clips we watched? Or was this just a pile-on for people who can't handle disagreement? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's it for this video. I got nothing for you today. Big things coming, just a lot going on, and I feel like I've been over-promising and under-delivering, so I'm going to hold back on giving specific dates, but look for some cool stuff coming soon. Otherwise, as always, thank you so much for taking a couple minutes out of your day to watch my video. I really, really appreciate it. Never forget Jesus loves you. See you guys.